After 7 years of marriage, I couldn't count the men my wife, Olivia, had slept with on both my hands and feet. The only reason I looked the other way was because she always paid me off. She would bury me in money. If she took on a boy toy, she'd give me a limited edition supercar. If she took a male model out for a party on the ocean, she'd sign over an identical yacht to my name. She bought my silence. She paid for my breakdowns, my questions, and my tears. That all changed when she got pregnant with our child. I thought she would finally settle down for the baby. I thought she would come back to our family. But just as I finished setting up the nursery, filled with joy and anticipation for his arrival, I got a call from the hospital. Olivia had gone behind my back and had an abortion. I raced to the hospital like a man possessed. And just as I reached her room, I heard a small child's voice from within. "Mommy, I hate the baby in your tummy. I don't want you to have any other kids." I froze, peering through the crack in the door. I saw a little boy. He was maybe 3 years old, nestled in Olivia's arms and whining for her affection. Standing beside them was a handsome young man, gently tucking the blanket around her. In that instant, my world fell apart. Olivia saw me then, and our eyes locked. She sent the man and the child out of the room before pulling out a blank check. She held it out to me. "Write whatever number you want." I ripped the check into tiny pieces. I looked at her and smiled. "Olivia, I don't want your money this time." I lifted my trembling hand, pointing toward the hallway where the little boy had vanished. "I want the boy." "Lucas, are you insane?" Olivia's face was a mask of disbelief, as if I'd told the most absurd joke imaginable. I repeated myself, "I want the boy." The betrayal and heartache were so profound that each word felt like it was costing me a piece of my soul. "What are you talking about?" she hissed, her voice low and threatening. "He's not your son," she snapped. "Your child is gone. I got rid of it." She was right. My child was gone, murdered by her. "Your son is my son now, isn't he?" I asked quietly, my gaze as cold as ice. "Or would you prefer the first grandson of the Sterling family to be known as illegitimate from the day he was born?" Olivia was speechless. We were childhood sweethearts, both of us orphans raised by her grandfather, Mr. Sterling. She was the heiress to the Sterling fortune. I was just the foster kid they took in. The Sterlings were a top-tier family that cared deeply about appearances, prioritizing tradition and reputation above all else. Olivia could play around. She could be reckless, but she would never be allowed to have a scandal that threatened the family's foundation. That man and that child were her greatest scandal. The man, Ethan, finally processed what was happening and burst back into the room. His voice was shrill. "Olivia, you can't give him our son. He's my only." He was the only weapon Ethan had to secure his position. A man from a modest background, dreaming of using a child to marry into the Sterling dynasty, was delusional. Watching Olivia, torn and struggling, I couldn't help but feel the bitter irony of it all. I summoned my remaining strength, pushed her aside, and walked slowly toward Ethan. He instinctively took a step back, his eyes full of suspicion and hostility. "Hello," I said. "I'm Olivia's husband, Lucas Miller." I forced a rigid smile and informed him of the cruel new reality, one word at a time. "Starting today, I'm this boy's father." I paused, savoring the way the color drained from his face before delivering the final, killing blow. "And you'll remember that it was your child who was aborted. Do you understand?" The word aborted was a whisper, but it hurt so much I could barely breathe. In a rage, Ethan snatched the vase from the nightstand and hurled it at me. "You're lying. He's my son." Olivia rushed over, her expression conflicted. "Olivia, you can't let him take our son." Ethan begged her. The word "our" was a spike in my ear. Olivia looked at me, completely torn. "Lucas," I leaned in and whispered in her ear the East Waterfront development. "Your grandfather wants it badly, and it just so happens my best friend controls the deal." Olivia's body went rigid. That development was the cornerstone of the Sterling family's 10-year strategic plan. It was also the key to proving her worth to her grandfather. She whipped her head around to face me, her eyes a storm of anger, resentment, and a flicker of fear. She took a deep breath, then turned to Ethan. "The boy. Let Lucas raise him," she said, her voice hollow. "It will give him a proper name." I turned to my assistant. Go get the boy and put him in my car. I walked out of the room and made another call. I need you to pull every string we have. I need a medical certificate stating my wife, Olivia, had an accidental miscarriage. I also need a new birth certificate for the boy. The mother's name will be Olivia Sterling, and the father's name will be Lucas Miller. Only Lucas Miller. Soon, the sound of a more violent argument, of things smashing, and of Ethan's guttural roars echoed from the room. I looked down at the boy who had been forced into my car. He glared at me with eyes just like Olivia's, a mixture of fear and pure hatred. A cold smile touched my lips. Olivia was discharged from the hospital quickly. Her body came home, but her heart stayed with Ethan. Her phone screen was constantly lit with messages from him. Olivia, I miss Noah so much. Can you please ask him to give her son back to me? I don't want anything else. I just want our boy. Olivia, I can't go on. His men pushed me down that day. I hit my head. The doctor said it's a concussion. Am I dying? This pretty boy knew exactly how to manipulate Olivia. He never attacked me directly, just hammered on about his pain and how much he missed his son. It was all designed to paint me as the vicious, heartless villain. Every time she read his texts, her brow would furrow, and she'd find an excuse to rush out. One morning, Olivia was gone, and I had the boy locked in his room. Ethan appeared at my front door like a phantom, his eyes filled with venom. Lucas, don't think for a second that you've won, he sneered. That unfortunate child of yours. I was the one who convinced Olivia to get rid of it. She was drunk that night, calling me over and over. I just mentioned on the call how your baby would be an obstacle for us. I told her I needed her with me. I never thought she'd hang up and actually schedule the procedure. And well, you know the rest. You were too weak to keep your own child, so don't blame anyone else, he said, a triumphant smirk on his face. You're just raising my son for me. Don't get too comfortable. He turned and walked away. Every single word was a white-hot brand on my heart. So that's how it happened. I closed my eyes. My hands were trembling uncontrollably at my sides. My nails dug into my palms until I could taste the metallic tang of blood in my mouth. A drop of blood fell from my palm onto the pure white carpet, blooming like a single tragic flower. Just then, Olivia came home. She saw the blood on my hand, froze for a second, then rushed over and grabbed my wrist. What happened? What is it now? She demanded. She pulled out the first aid kit to wrap my hand, her brow furrowed with what almost looked like genuine concern. I was shaking, wanting to scream, to interrogate her, to lunge at her and rip her apart. But I had no energy left. Just go, I said. Go be with Ethan. I don't need you here. Her phone rang. It was Ethan playing the victim again. Olivia answered without a moment's hesitation and then rushed out. I called my assistant and told him to get the car ready. We're going to the family estate. It was time to throw my weight around. When I arrived at the Sterling family estate holding the boy, the entire clan was thrown into a frenzy. My grandparents, aunts, uncles, everyone crowded around us. Oh, my sweet great-grandson, my grandmother cooed, carefully taking the child from my arms, her smile stretching from ear to ear. Is this from when you two were living abroad in Switzerland? My grandfather was even more thrilled, his hands trembling with excitement. He looked at me, his eyes filled with approval. You had a son behind our backs, and you kept him a secret for 3 years. I explained that his health had been fragile. I said he'd been recovering at a clinic overseas, which is why we kept it a secret. Now that he was strong and healthy, we brought him home. No one questioned it. No one knew that my heart had already died in that cold hospital room, right alongside my unborn child. My grandfather looked at the empty doorway. Where's Olivia? He asked, confused. Busy, I imagine, I said dismissively. I haven't seen her much lately. The rewards the elders showered upon me were staggering. My grandmother brought out her most prized possessions, a priceless jade ring and antique paintings. One after another, each was worth a fortune. My grandfather transferred 5% of the Sterling Corporation's stock directly into my name, making me the youngest board member overnight. I smiled and accepted it all. This was what I was owed. It was what I had bought with the life of my child. No one knew that. In the deepest corner of my sprawling walk-in closet, I kept a small, hidden sanctuary. There were no expensive watches or designer suits there. There was only a small, unmarked memorial tablet carved from dark sandalwood. In front of the tablet, I placed the baby rattle I had bought but could now never give him. I placed it along with a few impossibly small baby clothes. Every night when the house was silent, I would lock myself in that closet. I would hold the small wooden tablet, stroking it again and again. Hey, little one, Daddy's here. Your grandparents bought so many toys today. If you were here, they would all be for you. Do you blame me, little one? It's my fault. I am useless. I couldn't protect you. I never sobbed, just let the tears stream down my face in silence. The tears soaked the wood in my hands. It felt like there was a hole in my chest that would never heal, a gaping wound that the cold wind whistled through, making it painful to breathe. It was a secret that belonged only to me and my lost child. Olivia returned to the estate, too, but she didn't dare come near me. In front of the whole family, my grandfather pointed his cane at her and berated her for her absence, yelling that her husband and son were home, but she was nowhere to be found. He made her kneel in the family chapel all night as punishment. She couldn't seem to understand how the Lucas who had once loved her more than life itself, the man she had wrapped around her finger, could suddenly change so drastically. She would sometimes come to my bedroom, but she spent most of her time visiting the boy. She would hold him and read him stories, her eyes showing a strange, unfamiliar emotion I could only identify as maternal love. One evening, she stood behind me in silence for a long time before finally speaking. Lucas, about the abortion. I was wrong. I wasn't ready, she added. And Ethan, he's just too dependent on me. Don't hold it against him. I slowly lifted my head and looked at our reflection in the mirror. She was radiant and beautiful. I was gaunt and worn. Hold it against him? I laughed softly. What right do I have to hold anything against anyone? I couldn't even save my own son. The color drained from her face, as if my words had physically struck her. It was an accident, she shrieked. Why can't you just let it go? I've done everything I can to make it up to you. Make it up to me. Money was the most useless thing in the world to me now. I didn't want to argue anymore, so I pushed her out of the room. Lucas, what is it you really want? She yelled through the door. What do I want? I looked at her, my voice dripping with scorn. I want you to stay away from me. Finally, she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. From that day on, she rarely entered my room again. We couldn't even be bothered to maintain the paper-thin facade of our marriage anymore. On the boy's birthday, the Sterling family threw an incredibly lavish party. It was held on the great lawn of the estate, and every important person in the city was there. I stood beside my grandparents in a custom white suit, holding the boy's hand, accepting the congratulations and envious glances from everyone. My grandfather had named the boy Noah. It was a name for peace and a quiet tribute to the child I had lost. Halfway through the party, my grandfather walked onto the stage, leaning on his cane, and took the microphone. The entire crowd fell silent. Today, on the occasion of my great-grandson Noah's birthday party, I have an announcement to make. He boomed, his voice strong and clear. Sterling Industries has just launched a new subsidiary focused on artificial intelligence. Its current estimated valuation is already in the hundreds of billions. Today, I am giving this company as a gift to Lucas Miller. The applause was deafening. I held Noah, bowed slightly in gratitude, and kept a polite smile fixed on my face. The crowd erupted in another wave of applause and astonished gasps. Everyone stared at me with a mixture of envy and awe. A company worth hundreds of billions. It was given away just like that. It was an incredible display of favor. I held Noah close, preparing to walk on stage to give my thanks. Suddenly, the grand doors to the ballroom were thrown open. A man in a white suit, fighting past security, charged in like a lunatic. It was Ethan. He shoved his way through the crowd like a madman, making a beeline for the stage. Trailing behind him, her face ashen, was Olivia. Wait, he screamed. The sudden intrusion stunned everyone into silence. Olivia's expression changed instantly as she rushed forward to intercept him. Ethan, what are you doing here? Stop this. Ethan violently shook her off. He held up a document, his eyes bloodshot as he glared at me, his voice a pained shriek. Me making a scene? Olivia, just look at him. He's holding my son, accepting a fortune that should have been mine. He's the one causing a scene. Ethan let out a hysterical laugh, pushed Olivia away again, and pulled a file from his jacket, holding it high for all to see. Today, I'm going to show everyone just how the great Sterling family treats people. He stormed the stage and grabbed the microphone from the host. Everyone looked closely. This is a DNA paternity test. His voice boomed through the speakers, filling the entire hall. The report states with 99.9% certainty that Noah and I share the same DNA. I am his biological father. The room erupted. Every eye in the place turned on me like a spotlight. I could feel their doubt, their scorn, their morbid curiosity. Mr. Sterling's face turned grim, his eyes boring into me, demanding an answer. Olivia scrambled onto the stage, trying to grab the report from Ethan's hand, try to placate him. Stop it. Let's just go home and talk about this, okay? She pleaded. But Ethan ignored her, his red-rimmed eyes fixed on me. Lucas Miller, you're a thief. You stole my son. And now you stand here pretending to be a saint. You're shameless. He pointed at me, his voice raw with accusation. The scene descended into chaos. Olivia lunged to cover Ethan's mouth, but he shoved her violently away. Olivia, you have one choice now. Divorce him and be with me. As he shouted, my assistant quietly approached and placed an old, dark wooden box at my feet. I took a deep breath and walked slowly onto the stage. I calmly took the DNA report from Ethan's hand without giving it a single glance. Then I took the microphone and looked out at the sea of stunned faces. It's true, I said, my voice steady, a faint smile on my lips. Everything he just said is true. At that, the chaos in the room hit its crescendo. Just then, my assistant walked silently onto the stage and placed a heavy sandalwood box into my hands. I opened it, and looking out at the shocked faces in the crowd, I spoke slowly into the microphone. Please, everyone, calm down, I said, because today, I have a surprise of my own to share with all of you. What I took from the dark box was not another document, nor some piece of shocking evidence. It was a small, palm-sized memorial tablet, carved from dark sandalwood and completely unmarked. I placed it gently on the red velvet of the lectern. Then, one by one, I took out the little baby rattle and a few impossibly small articles of infant clothing, arranging them neatly in front of the tablet. The entire hall fell so silent you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was mystified by my bizarre actions. Even Ethan's shouting stopped. He just stared at me, confused. The blood drained from Olivia's face, leaving it a ghostly white. She stared at the wooden tablet, her body beginning to shake uncontrollably. Olivia, I finally looked up at her, my voice flat and dead. Do you remember him? My eyes swept slowly across the crowd. It's true. I'm not Noah's biological father. My voice started to tremble. Because my child, the grief I had suppressed for months, began to break through. In that moment, it came out like a flood. My child was murdered before he ever had a chance to be born. Killed by his own mother, Olivia. I couldn't hold it back any longer. I clutched the unmarked tablet to my chest, sank to the floor, and let out a choked, agonized sob. My baby, I'm so sorry. Daddy failed you. I'm so useless. My sobs were like a dull knife twisting in the heart of everyone present. I could feel the entire mood of the room shift. Even my grandfather, always so stoic, had red-rimmed eyes. His cane was thumping against the floor. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. I looked up, my eyes finding Olivia. I was so happy, so excited for my child to be born. I thought after 7 years, even if the love was gone, there was still some affection left. I thought at the very least, she would want her child. I raised my tear-filled eyes and stared at Olivia, who looked pale and ready to collapse. But I was wrong, all because her lover cried on the phone. He told her that my child was a threat to him, an obstacle to their relationship. So you hung up, and without telling me, you went to the hospital alone and scheduled the procedure. Olivia, he was your son too. How could you be so heartless? I clutched the tablet, my body shaking like a leaf in a storm. Olivia, don't you understand? That was our baby. He never even got a chance to see the world. My voice broke. You killed your own child. You murdered your own son. The Sterling family elders looked ashen. Olivia stared at me, then at the tablet in my arms, her proud, arrogant expression finally shattering, replaced by pure terror and despair. No, it wasn't like that, Lucas. I didn't mean for it to happen, she stammered, her words a jumbled mess. I took a cold step back, away from her touch. Olivia, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You know perfectly well whether this boy has a drop of Sterling blood in him. Did you really think you could fool your grandfather forever? Did you think using a child with no connection to the family would help you secure your position and inherit the Sterling fortune? My words were a thunderbolt, striking not only Olivia, but every member of the Sterling family in the audience. Mr. Sterling's face contorted with rage. Lucas, what nonsense are you spouting? He roared. At that moment, my assistant stepped forward and handed a file to the old man. What is this? Mr. Sterling asked, opening the folder with trembling hands. My assistant's voice came over a secondary microphone, calm and clear. That is a DNA report from Ms. Olivia Sterling and yourself, sir. The results indicate that there is no biological relationship between the two of you. If Ethan's arrival was a bomb, this report was a nuclear detonation. The entire room erupted into absolute pandemonium. It's a fake. It has to be fake. Olivia shrieked, lunging for the report. Grandpa, tell them. Tell them, I'm your granddaughter. I am. But all the strength seemed to have drained from Mr. Sterling. He stared blankly from the report in his hands to the hysterical Olivia, looking as if he'd aged 20 years in a single moment. He muttered, Not mine. How could she not be mine? Olivia's face was the color of ash as she crumpled to the floor. It was all clear now. She wasn't a Sterling by birth. There must have been a switch at the hospital for some reason. And she, it seemed, had known this secret all along. That's why she was so desperate for a legitimate child, an heir she could control completely, to help her maintain her grip on the Sterling fortune. She was afraid that a child of my blood, a true heir to both the Miller and Sterling families, would usurp the inheritance she planned for her own son. But she made one fatal miscalculation. She never imagined I would beat her at her own game, that I would take the boy and uncover her deepest secret. Security, Mr. Sterling roared, pointing his cane at Olivia and Ethan. Get this disgraceful pair out of my sight. The Sterling family has no such daughter. As of today, she is no longer a part of this family. Security guards immediately moved in. They dragged the broken forms of Olivia and Ethan out of the hall. In a vast ballroom, all that remained was the sound of Olivia's desperate sobs and my own cold, final words. I looked down at the woman I had loved for a decade. Olivia, I said, wiping the tears from my face, my voice now calm. Let's get a divorce. She snapped her head up, her red-rimmed eyes pleading. No, Lucas, please don't. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, just give me one more chance. A chance. I laughed, but was a sound more painful than a sob. Does my son get another chance to live? I didn't look at her again. I turned to Mr. Sterling and bowed deeply. Grandfather, I'm sorry for disappointing you. Thank you for taking care of me all these years. The company, the stocks, the assets, I don't want any of it. All I want, I pause, my voice raspy, is a divorce. With that, I picked up my son, and under the watchful eyes of everyone, I walked off that stage that was never meant for me. The noise of the ballroom, the murmuring guests, Olivia's screams. I shut it all out as I closed the door behind me. I returned to my bedroom, which felt cold and empty. I didn't turn on the light. I walked into the closet and carefully placed the small, wooden tablet back in its sanctuary. I knelt on the cool floor and reached out, gently stroking the unmarked wood as if it were my child's face. It's over, little one, I whispered. Daddy's taking you home. The tears came again, silent and unstoppable. This brutal revenge had taken everything out of me. I had won, but I felt no joy. I just felt empty, terrifyingly empty. I don't know how much time passed before there was a soft knock on the closet door. Lucas, it's your grandfather. Mr. Sterling's voice sounded older and more tired than I had ever heard it. I was silent for a moment before answering in a hoarse voice, "Please come in." The door opened, and an assistant helped the old man inside. He didn't turn on the lights, but simply stood behind me in the darkness, his gaze fixed on the little shrine. In the dim light, I could see his stooped shoulders trembling. "My boy, I've wronged you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "And I've wronged your parents." I froze. In all my years living with the Sterlings, he had never once spoken of my parents. All I knew was that they had died in an accident when I was a small child. "I was selfish," he sighed, sinking onto a nearby ottoman and waving the assistant away. "Lucas, your father was my oldest friend, like a brother to me. You were his only son. We came up together, survived things you couldn't imagine, and we promised our families would be joined one day. But as fate would have it, he had a son, and I had a son." He seemed lost in memory, a flicker of light in his tired eyes. "Then your father and mother married and had you." My old friend was so happy. He said now our families were finally connected. But who could have predicted it? A car crash, and they were both gone. They died so suddenly, but they left you a massive trust fund. It was more than enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life, enough to build your own empire. I stood there completely still, hearing the truth about my own life for the first time. That money, I was selfish with it, the old man confessed, his face a mask of shame. "I brought you into my home, telling everyone you were just a foster child. I watched you and Olivia grow up together, and you were so close. I thought if you two married and had a child, the Miller and Sterling bloodlines would finally be joined. I thought it would be a way to honor my old friend. My plan was to wait until you had a child, until your family was stable, and then I would turn the entire trust over to you with all its growth. It would have secured your position within the family, and it would have kept those assets within our greater family. So that was it. My entire life had been a part of his grand design. The irony was that for all his lifelong scheming, he never once suspected that his most cherished granddaughter wasn't his own flesh and blood. And he certainly never calculated that the very child meant to unite our families would be murdered by that same cherished granddaughter. "Grandfather," I said, rising and walking over to him. In the moonlight, I could clearly see the tear tracks on his face and the deep lines of regret. I felt a storm of emotions, anger at the deception, but mostly a profound pity for this old man and his ruined legacy. After all, he had raised me for over 20 years. That kindness was real. "Let's let the past be the past," I said quietly. "As for Olivia, I won't pursue the matter any further, out of respect for you and the years I spent with this family. I promise I won't declare all-out war on the Sterlings in the world of business. We'll compete on our own merits." The old man flinched, looking up at me in disbelief. He must have thought I would use this as leverage to destroy his family. "I'm moving out tomorrow," I interrupted, my voice calm but resolute. "My lawyers will have the divorce papers drawn up. As for the trust fund," I paused, gazing at the moon outside the window, "I'll be taking all of it back. It's the only thing my parents ever left me." I moved out of the Sterling estate. I left at the crack of dawn, not waking anyone. I took only a small suitcase and the little wooden tablet from the closet. As my car pulled out of the main gate, I saw Olivia in the rearview mirror, chasing after me. She was in a thin nightgown, barefoot, stumbling in the cold morning air. Tears were streaming down her face. "Lucas, don't go. Come back." Her cries were snatched and scattered by the wind. I didn't look back. I pressed the accelerator and left my entire past behind me. A few days later, I officially took control of the trust fund my parents had left me. The amount was far greater than I had ever imagined. After years of smart investments, it had grown into the foundation of a massive business empire, with holdings in finance, tech, and real estate. My parents, it turned out, had been brilliant. I used the money to start my own firm. The name was simple, Miller Capital. I didn't touch the billion-dollar subsidiary Mr. Sterling had given me. That was a public gift. Taking it would have made it seem like I was extorting them. I wanted to reclaim what was mine honorably and build a future of my own making. I threw myself into work. My days were spent in boardrooms, debating strategy with my team, analyzing every project, and making every decision. My nights were spent locked in my office, studying global markets and hunting for the next opportunity. I compressed all my grief and pain into an endless cycle of work. The only time I allowed myself to feel was late at night, back in my empty apartment, when I would take out the unmarked tablet and speak to my son. "Hey, little one, Daddy, close another big deal today. When the company goes public, I'll take you to the highest mountain in the world, and we'll look at the stars. How does that sound?" He was the softest part of my heart and the hardest armor that drove me forward. Olivia didn't give up. She started waiting for me outside my office building every single day, rain or shine. At first, she tried her old, imperious tactics, ordering me to come back to her. "Lucas, haven't you had enough of this tantrum? Come home with me." I would just glance at her and walk past, as if she were a complete stranger. After being ignored a few times, she changed her strategy. She stopped wearing makeup, dressed in simple clothes, and stood in the wind, trying to look as pathetic and haggard as possible. "Lucas, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, can you forgive me? Look, I made your favorite soup. Just have one sip, please, just one." She chased my car with a thermos, hot soup sloshing out and scalding her hands, but she wouldn't even notice, just kept pleading. My assistant couldn't stand it and would offer to get out and talk to her. I always stopped him. "Drive," I'd say, not even bothering to look at her. There is no greater sorrow than a heart that has already died, and mine had died with my son. To me, everything she did was just another pathetic performance. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she had lost everything: the sterling name, the husband she could control, and a life of effortless wealth she thought was hers. Miller Capital grew faster and more aggressively than even I had anticipated. Within 6 months, we made a name for ourselves with a series of precise, ruthless acquisitions. Meanwhile, the Sterling family was in steady decline. After Olivia was exiled, Mr. Sterling fell gravely ill, and Sterling Industries was thrown into turmoil. The uncles Olivia had kept in check began fighting amongst themselves for control, tearing the company apart from the inside. The fatal blow, however, was their loss of the East Waterfront development. It was the very same project I had used as leverage against Olivia. I now acquired it legitimately, using my own connections to secure a better deal for my friend. The successful launch of that project doubled Miller Capital's valuation overnight and cemented my new status as a major player in the business world. I was on the cover of financial magazines. Young, wealthy, mysterious, decisive. The media painted me as a prodigy, a legend who went from a spurned husband to a titan of capital. No one knew that this legend was built on the grave of an unborn child. Olivia grew more and more unhinged. She couldn't get into my building and couldn't get to me, so she resorted to extreme measures to get my attention. She would stand in the pouring rain outside my office until she collapsed and was taken to the hospital. She would call me in the middle of the night, sobbing that she was going to kill herself. She even tracked down Ethan, the same lover she had once been so desperate to protect. I saw them both again at a charity gala. By then, I was the guest of honor, seated at the head table. Olivia and Ethan were there as part of the catering staff. Olivia was carrying a tray of drinks, her face pale and her eyes vacant. When she saw me, a flicker of light appeared in those dead eyes. She started running toward me, heedless of everything else. "Lucas!" Security guards immediately intercepted her. 2 large men held her back, but she kept struggling, reaching for me like a madwoman. "Lucas, look at me. I have nothing left. Are you satisfied now? Are you happy?" she screamed. "I'm working as a waitress for you. I'm suffering in ways you never had to. Please come back. We can start over." Across the room, other guards had Ethan pinned to the floor. He was no longer the arrogant pretty boy, just a defeated man, glaring at me with pure hatred. "Lucas Miller, this is all your fault. You ruined everything." I picked up my wine glass, swirling the red liquid, not even bothering to stand. I looked across the room at the woman I had once loved down to my very bones, and now hated with the same intensity. Then I raised my glass in her direction in a dismissive toast, and I drained it in one go. I didn't say a word, but my eyes told her everything she needed to know. Yes, I was satisfied, but I would never go back. This was the debt you owed me and my son, and everything you were suffering now was only the beginning. After that night at the gala, Olivia disappeared completely. I assumed she had finally given up, or perhaps reality had finally broken her. My life returned to a state of unprecedented peace. The company was on track, and everything was moving in the right direction. I started to slowly make peace with myself. On weekends, I began volunteering at an orphanage, playing with the children and reading them stories. Seeing their innocent, happy faces felt like a sliver of sunlight finally piercing the hole in my heart. I even began to consider adoption, a child who would have been about my son's age. I could never have another child of my own blood, but I could give my love to a child who needed a home. I had just submitted the application and was waiting with a sense of hope when I received an unexpected call. It was Mr. Sterling. His voice was frail, as if each word was a struggle. "Lucas, you should come to the hospital. It's Olivia. She's not going to make it." I held the phone, saying nothing for a long moment. In the end, I went. It wasn't out of pity, and it wasn't because of any lingering affection. I just wanted to see the final act of this farce with my own eyes. The hospital room was filled with the heavy smell of antiseptic and the stench of death. Olivia was lying on the bed, so thin she was nothing but a bag of bones. Her face was completely drained of color. The once vibrant, impossibly arrogant Sterling heiress now looked like a rapidly wilting flower, the life quickly draining out of her. It was terminal cancer. Maybe she never recovered properly from the abortion, or maybe it was the relentless series of blows and self-inflicted torment that followed. The disease had consumed her with a devastating swiftness. She struggled to sit up, reaching a hand out as if to grab me. "Lucas," she rasped. I stood a few feet away, making no move to get closer. Tears streamed from the sunken corners of her eyes. I'm so sorry." With all her remaining strength, she fumbled for something under her pillow and held it out to me with a trembling hand. It was a tiny, hand-stitched tiger cub hat. The stitches were crooked and clumsy, clearly the work of a novice. I wanted to make something for our baby with my own hands. But it's too late now. "Lucas, in the next life, let it be my turn to love you, okay?" Before she could finish, her outstretched hand fell limp. On the heart monitor, the line that represented her life went flat, and the machine let out a long, piercing tone. Doctors and nurses rushed in, and the room dissolved into chaos. I just stood there silently, watching the face that had once haunted my dreams and later my nightmares as it slowly lost all expression. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I bent down and picked up the tiny tiger cub hat from the cold floor. Then I turned and walked away. "Olivia, let's not meet again in the next life."